This video is a part of our little Godzilla and other Kaiju discussion series we got going on, so check that out if you're interested. Godzilla's cool, no questions there. He's had a lot of games, but most of them in the early days really struggled to capture the excitement of the monster fights that they tended to be based around. Enter Pipeworks, some weird small company that worked with Atari to make Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee, an all-out monster fighting bash that finally captured the chaos of the fights from the movies. Originally a Gamecube exclusive, released 2002, an Xbox version would follow in 2003. The Gamecube version is how I played this game as a child and now, so that's the version that I'll be looking at because I do not have the Xbox version. There's also originally going to be a PS2 version, but for whatever reason it was scrapped, probably in favor of the new sequel game that was coming out. The premise is simple. Aliens called the Vortaak are controlling all the monsters the player isn't controlling, using them to try to force the entire Earth to submit to their control. The chosen monster then goes and beats up all the rest of them. Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee is something between a 3D fighting game and a WWE game. Monsters have three main attacks, punch on A, kick on B, and heavy attack on X, with each having slight variations of the moves depending on whether the stick is held forward, back, up, or down. Heavy attacks are monster specific, usually some kind of tail swipe, and often have additional properties like using energy to increase their power. Monsters can also press Z to fire their projectiles. A quick tap will cause a fast projectile attack that drains a lot of energy, while holding it will charge a laser that fires continuously. Monsters can also grab and throw each other or buildings and other items in the environment to toss at each other as weapons. Other than that, there's a block, run button, and jump. Each monster has an energy meter that's used by their energy attacks, which are the lasers, the projectiles, and certain other attacks for a few of the monsters. And the battle continues until there's only one monster left standing after the others have had their health depleted. During the battle, human and alien forces will attack nearby monsters in tanks or spaceships to slightly damage them, or in rare occasions temporarily freeze them. Hedorah, a villain from one of the movies, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, can also show up periodically and drain a monster's energy. There are additionally a few power-ups that appear during fights, Energy and Health, which restore their respective meters, Mothra Airstrike, which causes Mothra to aid the player who grabbed the power-up by firing lasers at their opponents, and Rage, which increases the attack of a monster and gives them the ability to use a powerful super move. Usually powerful, some of them are pretty bad. It's not a very deep game, it's a button-mashy, goofy, dumb game. What it lacks in depth, it makes up for in just being so Godzilla though. The sense of destruction and scale and the fun of just getting to be a giant monster and destroy a city and bash another monster over the head with a building is just so much fun. The game looks okay. Graphically the monsters are detailed and look nice, but the environments are pretty bland. The monsters have tons of fan-servicey little details that make them really cool to watch, but there's nothing too striking about the game's appearance. The title screen music is absolutely fantastic, and the classic Godzilla theme, which is great as always, plays over the credits, but the battle music is absolutely nothing more than just passable, very indistinct. The game features 11.5 playable monsters, and I'll get back to that half when it comes up. Truthfully, the monsters aren't hugely distinct from each other, but they all have little differences in their stats, and obviously slightly different moves, even though there's no like special inputs or anything. A couple of them have unique properties, and also I just wanted to talk about all the characters and a little bit of their backgrounds. Anguirus is Godzilla's first ever rival. Appearing in the second movie in the series, Godzilla raids again, fighting Godzilla to the death before a second Anguirus, friendly to Godzilla, would appear later in the series, the one this game's appearance is based on. He is a heavily melee-focused character, he lacks a real projectile, and his charge beam attack is a very short-range shout. The shout can pass through buildings, which is pretty unique, and will hit repeatedly when in range, which makes it good in a few circumstances, although hard to use. Anguirus has to maintain proximity to other monsters, but hits fairly hard when he can. While blocking, monsters that attack him with melee attacks are temporarily stunned by the spikes on his back, and he also walks on all four while he's running, which lets him avoid certain laser attacks if they're not being manually aimed while approaching. He's pretty mediocre. A lot of monsters have such good ranging capabilities that he struggles to get in and take advantage of his few good attributes. When the first Godzilla was destroyed by the Oxygen Destroyer at the end of the first movie, a bunch of crustaceans would mutate into Destoroyah, the main villain of Godzilla vs. Destoroyah. These ancient crustaceans could fuse together and eventually reach their perfect form, which is featured as a playable character here. Destoroyah is unlocked by clearing Adventure Mode with Godzilla 2000. Destoroyah's heavy attacks use his horn at the cost of energy, which have absurd range and break past guarding. In short, they're incredibly fucking powerful. While short range, his quick projectile draws monsters in and drops them on the ground. It's like a gravity well thing. All of his attacks hit incredibly hard, his offense is insane, and he's generally just incredibly good. Like, definitely one of the best characters in the game by quite a long shot. Gigan is an alien cyborg sent by the M Space Hunter Nebula aliens to assist King Ghidorah in taking over the Earth in Godzilla vs. Gigan, but apparently was popular enough to also return to the next movie, Godzilla vs. Megalon. Gigan is really cool. It's hard not to love his goofy-ass buzzsaw stomach and scythe arms. Gigan is unlocked by clearing adventure mode with Angirius. Gigan's only really unique trait is his teleport. By pressing A and Y or L and R, Gigan will warp behind his opponents. Gigan is pretty frustrating to use besides that though. He's generally slow and very frail. Some of his attacks, like his spinning attack that ends his X combo and his absolutely broken rage move, are pretty good, but it's not easy to land anything useful. And with how fast he goes down because of how frail he is, he's really rough to mess around with. He's all glass, no cannon. Gigan, not good. Godzilla 90s is the Godzilla of the Heisei era, going from the return of Godzilla to Godzilla vs. Destoroyah through 7 films. For those unaware, the Heisei era was the first reboot of the Godzilla series. Starting in 1984, it ignores every movie that followed the original, with this Godzilla being the new version of the second Godzilla, not the one that dies at the end of the first movie. Godzilla is really the Shoto of Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee. He's pretty average at everything, although his atomic breath is fairly strong and his heavy tail attacks have decent range. There's nothing really special or standout with him. He's pretty much the most perfectly average character in the game. Godzilla 2000 is the third version of Godzilla 2 from Godzilla 2000 Millennium. Once again, ignoring everything but the first movie, this Godzilla is a new, edgier design from a new era, and is kind of a giant asshole for no reason. That's just his character, I guess. Godzilla 2000 is unlocked by clearing adventure with Godzilla 90s. Godzilla 2000's moveset is identical to 90s, but he's a touch faster and stronger, so he's basically a direct improvement on the other version. Still fairly average, but just like slightly better than Godzilla 90s. Pretty much no reason to use Godzilla 90s after 2000's unlocked. King Ghidorah is easily one of Godzilla's most popular enemies. While the three-headed dragon first appeared in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, this version is based on the Heisei reboot, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, the mutant fusion of 3 small creatures sent back in time by time-traveling terrorists to get irradiated by the nuclear bomb instead of Godzilla to use them as a weapon against the world-dominating power of Japan. That's actually the plot of the movie. It's insane. One of the worst time travel plots ever made, and we have videos about all the Godzilla movies, so check those out if you're interested. King Ghidorah is unlocked by clearing adventure with Megalon. When firing his laser attack, all 3 beams fire separately, which can kinda catch enemies in a wider radius sometimes. His grab range is huge and his throws do really good damage as well. He's solidly survivable, good at tanking hits, and he can also fly to avoid certain attacks, but he's pretty slow in the air. Ghidorah is pretty good, a little slow and awkward, but pretty good at tanking hits and taking out enemies. Mecha King Ghidorah is the corpse of the above character from the same movie, used to drive Godzilla back into the sea to stop him from destroying Japan after he defeats Ghidorah. Mecha King Ghidorah is unlocked by clearing adventure mode with, who else, King Ghidorah. Mecha King only has a few differences. He's even more absurdly defensive than before. His block pulls up a barrier that actually blocks energy beams and attacks, unlike most blocks. Not only this, but this energy barrier also heals him when he's hit by energy attacks, although using the energy barrier costs energy. His tapped Z move is the Taser, a limited 3-use attack that stuns and drains the energy of monsters it hits. He can also regain a Taser with the energy power-up if he finds one. Mecha King is really good. His Taser and shield are fully busted, and he's incredibly hard to kill. Easily a top-tier character, one of the best in the game. Mechagodzilla is a weird case. He's the 1.5 character as I mentioned earlier. In the American Gamecube version, Mechagodzilla is the Heisei version, from the confusingly titled Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, despite the character not being the second Mechagodzilla due to the reboot. In this movie, Mechagodzilla is made by Humanity Counter Godzilla, made from the salvaged parts of Mecha King Ghidorah. In Japan though, when Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee came out, the most recent movie happened to be Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, where Mechagodzilla, often called Kiryu, Japanese for Machine Dragon, was constructed using the bones of 1954's Godzilla, whose spirit possesses it and causes it to destroy Tokyo, and it would later appear again in Godzilla Tokyo SOS. By the time the Xbox version released, Against Mechagodzilla had come to America, and both versions of Mechagodzilla were included in the game. Mechagodzilla is unlocked by clearing adventure with Rodan, Mecha King Ghidorah, and Destroya. Mechagodzilla is strong, his defense is insane, and he hits hard too, fitting given he's the final boss of every character's adventure mode save his own. Like Mecha King, he has a limited use attack, a series of homing missiles that deal tons of damage. He has flight as well, although it's slow just like he is on the ground. Mechagodzilla is incredibly good, definitely reaching the same level as Mecha King Ghidorah. Megalon is a bit of an oddball. Rare for Godzilla opponents, he's only appeared in one film, in Godzilla vs. Megalon, but has remained incredibly popular despite this. Mad at humanity over nuclear tests, the underwater city of Seatopia sends Megalon as punishment, aided by Gigan. Megalon's tabbed Z move is an explosion that can also damage himself, and his X moves drain meters to spin his drills for extra damage. He would already be pretty good if it was just for these, but Megalon's best attribute is his tunneling, which is executed like Gigan's teleports. Megalon can burrow underground, draining meters slowly as he does, making him impossible to hit, and he can pop out of the ground to land a grab on opponents for basically free, assuming they don't somehow jump over him or fly away. Megalon is incredibly obnoxious, fun to use, and awful to fight. One of my favorite characters by far. Orga is the main villain of Godzilla 2000 Millennium. Created by the Millennians, he's created from Godzilla's cells and attempts to eat Godzilla to complete himself. Orga is unlocked by clearing Adventure with Godzilla 2000 for a second time after clearing it with every other character. Being the final character, Orga is pretty good. His Z move stuns enemies, he has huge range, hits like a truck, and his grab range is absolutely incredible with amazing throws that are not only insanely cool to look at because they're all like wrestling body slams and elbow drops, but they hit incredibly hard to boot. His grab range is so large and his elbow slam move leaves opponents so close that he can usually start chain grabs out of their wake up attacks and just mash on them. The AI is especially very easy to chain grab, which lets him just shred opponents. Absolutely busted. Finally is Rodan, a character who first appeared in his own self-titled movie, but would eventually be folded into Godzilla canon. Rodan here is based on the Heisei version from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, Godzilla's ally who guarded over the egg that contained baby Godzilla. Rodan is unlocked by clearing Adventure with Gigan. Rodan is full glass cannon, incredibly flail, but easily the fastest character in the game and with great damaging moves, especially the throws, made better with the longest grab range in the game. He literally leaps forward to grab, it's super busted. Rodan can also fly, this makes him kind of impossible to catch for most characters, he's incredibly fast. While it does drain energy, it doesn't start draining energy for a few seconds, so he gets a little bit of free flight, and it drains very slowly, so he can fly for a good amount of time. If I had to pick one character to be my main, it'd definitely be Rodan. He's really fun and really stupidly good. Oh, I forgot to mention his laser attack is absolutely fucking amazing as well. The game has various stages, although most have little impact on the game, save a few small gimmicks like different buildings, maybe some explosive buildings, different grabbables. Each stage has a day and night version, which is only visual, and most have various sizes. 2 smaller maps and 1 larger map that combines the smaller 2. These stages are London, Los Angeles, Monster Island, which is minorly different as it has a lava pit that burns monsters over time when they stand in it and lacks any buildings, instead just having rocks to throw. Osaka, San Francisco, Seattle, Tokyo, and the Vortaak mothership, which is also unique, beginning in a small ring of barriers that lower when the pylons around them are destroyed, opening the rest of the map up. The Xbox version also has a few added maps that I can't play given I have the Gamecube version, the boxing arena, a plain ring with no buildings or military, the Vortaak homeworld which has lava and UFOs flying around, and a DLC map, Thrashburg, which seems to be a regular city. The main single-player mode in Destroy All Monsters Melee is Adventure. Players pick a monster and go through 8 fights. Each monster fights a set order of opponents, although the order doesn't seem to have any particular meaning. At the beginning, there's a short cutscene of the Vortaak leader telling the people of Earth to surrender.
Attention, inhabitants of the planet you call Earth. We are the Vortaak, alien invaders from a distant galaxy who possess an intellect and technology far superior to your own. We have come to seize control of your planet and plunder its resources for our own purposes.
The final fight is always against Mechagodzilla and the Vortaak mothership, except for in Mechagodzilla's campaign where he goes up against Mecha King Ghidorah. It's a bit odd that it's Mechagodzilla, given neither version of Mecha-G in this game was made by aliens, unlike his original Showa appearance in the first timeline. Mecha King Ghidorah as well was made by humans, so it's not much better in that regard. After clearing Adventure Mode, the Vortaak retreat but promise to return, which they eventually do in the sequels.
Your monster has defeated our ultimate weapon and escaped. Our campaign to seize your planet has been thwarted. For now. But we will return, Earthlings. We will return.
Adventure Mode is fine. It's 8 standard battles, there's really nothing to it, and you only go through it because it's how everything is unlocked. It's fun enough because it's a fighting game, so you're just doing what you always do, but there's nothing special about the format of Adventure Mode. The story doesn't even change if you play as a villainous monster in any way. The other single-player mode is Survival, where players fight as many monsters as they can in a row, only regaining half their health between rounds. I don't find modes like this very entertaining, but it's there if people want it, I guess. There's also various multiplayer modes. Versus is one-on-one matches, Melee is a free-for-all for up to 4 players, and Team Battle is Melee with teams. The game is fun with friends, too simple to take seriously, but it's certainly an enjoyable time to bash your brother's head in with a giant building. There's also Destruction, a multiplayer mode where players win by destroying more buildings than the other players, which is honestly pretty boring. When you have a fighting game and fighting game mechanics, and your goal is to not fight someone else, you're just kind of like mashing buttons to break some buildings. It's hard to say a lot about Destruction, it's not very interesting. Outside of the gameplay modes, there's the Gallery, a series of concept art and models which are unlocked by finding the randomly dropped Atari power-ups on normal or hard difficulties in adventure mode. I'm not going to grind out a bunch of JPEGs, and the unlock requirement is a little silly. The game also has a ton of cheats, color filters. The Technicolor one is awful and just makes everything purple, which isn't what Technicolor is at all. Invincibility, unlimited energy, extra power, unlocks, and so on. I really miss when games had cheats, and this game has a huge variety of them, which is fun. Godzilla Destroy All Monsters also had a Game Boy Advance version, or companion of sorts, called Godzilla Domination. I haven't played it, but it looks pretty neat. It translates the gameplay down to 2D, kind of making it like SNK's King of the Monsters. It's made by WayForward, who made Shantae and other games, so it looks really nice. It has a story mode, battles against AI, and multiplayer over link cable, including a 1-cartridge mode, where up to 4 people can play off 1 cartridge, but only as Godzilla. The game has a few different playable characters. Godzilla, who in America is the 90s Godzilla and in Japan is the Godzilla from Against Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla, who changes in region the same way as he does in Destroy All Monsters Melee, Kiryu in Japan, and Mechagodzilla in America. King Ghidorah, Mothra, who isn't actually playable in Destroy All Monsters Melee but does become playable in sequels, who also has regional changes. She's the Heisei version in America, and the version from Against Mechagodzilla's sequel Tokyo SOS in Japan. Megalon, and Rodan. The game seems cool. I'm not going to talk about it too much because I haven't played it, but I did look up a little bit of the footage, and it came out at the same time as Destroy All Monsters and used the same cover art, so it's definitely meant to be a companion. It seems cool. Hopefully I eventually get a chance to play through it, because it's definitely neat. Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee was a big hit. Not only would it get 2 sequels, Godzilla Saved the Earth and Godzilla Unleashed, it would also lead to Sony's War of the Monsters, a game with very similar gameplay but lacking the Godzilla license, as well as the eventual Kickstarter failure of Colossal Kaiju Combat, which was supposed to be a spiritual successor to this game with some former Pipeworks employees working on it, which was at least partially destroyed by them allowing backers to insert their furry OCs into the game, alongside the general mismanagement stuff I'm sure, which led to the game never coming out. Destroy All Monsters Melee is good. It lacks depth, it's a little silly and simple, but the fan service is great and it's got a basic level of fun for what it is. A weird WWE Godzilla game that captures the spirits of the fights in the movies and lets players go at it in real time. It feels like a Godzilla movie in that it's dumb, shallow, silly, and just kind of enjoyable. It's not amazing, but for a weird licensed game thing, it's pretty good for what it is. I'd recommend checking it out. I don't actually have a whole lot to say about it beyond this. It's not a game that has a lot of depth to talk about, but I do enjoy it despite that. So yeah, this is just a quick little video about that. We have other Godzilla discussions, as I mentioned, so check those out. I'll link some of those in the description. And yes, thank you for watching.